Hello, welcome back. Well, as you may know, I recently wrote a book called Are We Nearly There Yet? And it's a book about the Israelites and what God taught them on their journey from slavery in Egypt to entering into the promised land. That was a 40-year journey. And during those 40 years, the Lord took them to not one, but five different wildernesses uh, in order to teach them specific crucial lessons. Well, despite them being slaves in Egypt, the food there was plentiful and the crops grew abundantly. Likewise, the land they were being called to, the promised land, was a land flowing with milk and honey. Again, a land of abundance. However, to get from the one to the other, to get from Egypt to the promised land, they had to journey through something you could call the land in between, which is something that I talk about in my book. Are we nearly there yet? The land in between is that desert place that exists between where you were and where you need to get to. How things were before God got involved and how things are going to be when he gets you to the promised land. The problem with the land in between is that it doesn't feel like a good place to be. And even though you knew you couldn't stay where you were because you were miserable or because it um, just wasn't a good fit, or because you knew God was calling you to something better, when you've been in the land in between for a while, you begin to look back at what you had and where you were and begin to wonder if you've done the right thing. You start thinking back to where you were and you start thinking maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe I would be better off back there. There's always a land in between and it's never an easy place to be. Well, I look in my book at the experience of the land in between as experienced by Habakkuk, an Old Testament prophet. And in Habakkuk chapter 2, well, this is all about his experience of that land in between. That's where Habakkuk was, and he got to the point in the land in between that we all get to. He says, "How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Violence is everywhere, I cry, but you do not come to save." That is what the land in between feels like. The land in between is the place where the hope of what lies up ahead begins to fade, and you start looking back and thinking, maybe I shouldn't have left. Maybe it wasn't so bad after all. Have you ever found yourself in the land in between? It can be a small example, like Jan, my wife, and I had just recently. We knew we needed to move, but the traumatic experience of selling the house, with the deal falling through time after time, got us to the point of wondering: should we just stay where we were? Why put ourselves through all of this? Now, it could be a much more serious thing, like if you've been in an abusive relationship and you knew you needed to get out. Life as a single parent has been really hard, and you find yourself having crazy thoughts like, maybe it wasn't so bad after all. Maybe, maybe I should go back. Just maybe I should have just put up with the physical violence or the infidelity of the other person, or whatever. That's what living in the land in between can do to you. Then there's the land in between of God's promises. He promises you something, you've stepped out in faith accordingly, and now you find yourself in that dry and barren place of God not having made good as yet on those promises. And you're beginning to wonder, why did I ever step out in faith? So, why does God allow the land in between? Well, that's what Habakkuk was wondering. He'd been in the land in between for what felt like forever, and he just about had enough, and he was crying out to God, "How long? Is this dry and barren place going on forever?" Why does God allow the land in between? Well, absolutely not to discourage us. He allows the land in between because it's only there that certain things can come to pass. As Friedrich Nietzsche put it, he who has a why to live by can bear almost any how. If you have a why to live by, you can bear almost any how. If you know that there's a purpose, you can put up with the discomfort. So, what's the purpose of the land in between? Well, the land in between is where God teaches us about his timing. Now, as you may well know, in the Greek language, there are two words that translate to the English word time. The first is chronos. Chronos time is the physical ticking of the clock, 1 second following another. One moment is, in essence, no different to another moment. That's where we get the word chronometer or watch or clock from. The other word, the other Greek word is kairos. Kairos time is the appointed time, the particular moment, a moment of special importance. And when two people, for example, are stood at the front of church getting married, it's not just another chronos moment, it's a kairos moment, a special, significant, appointed moment. God deals in chronos time. He came into the world, came into time and space for us, but his speciality is kairos time. So here's the point. We judge how things are going by looking at chronos time. But God judges how things are going by looking at kairos time. And the land in between is where chronos time and kairos time are really brought into focus. We think, well, nothing good has happened for ages. I've been stuck in this same place, this same land in between for the longest time. God has clearly forgotten about me. God looks at it differently. He says, these things I plan won't happen right away. Slowly, steadily, surely, the time approaches when the vision will be fulfilled. If it seems slow, that is because you're measuring it by chronos time, wait patiently, for it will surely take place. It will not be delayed. Well, the land in between, that place where you've been left, where you've left the safe and the known, but you're not yet seeing the benefits and the blessings of taking that faithful step, is the place where we have the opportunity of learning about God's perfect timing. As Jesus once said, my time is not yet here. For you, any time will do. He's saying, my kairos moment is not yet here. But for you, any chronos moment will do. But the land in between brings us to the place of learning about God's perfect timing. Now, how does that happen? It happens because the land in between is where we come to the end of our solutions and truly trust God. The land in between is the place that God allows us to get to where we just can't do anything to make things work. It feels like the worst place possible, but it isn't. Because it's the place where we finally admit our complete dependence on him. Habakkuk was crying out to God, how long? He tried everything he knew to change the situation he was in, and nothing had worked. So why wasn't God doing anything about it? And God responds by saying, the vision will still happen at the appointed time, at the kairos time. It hurries towards its goal. It won't be a lie. If it's delayed, wait for it. It will certainly happen. It won't be late. In other words, Habakkuk, you're going to have to trust me. What I promise will come to pass. But there is nothing you can do to hurry it along. You don't need a new plan. You need a new trust. And the land in between is where we learn just how dependent we are on God. Like when a child that we have is maybe seriously ill, and there's nothing we as a parent can do to make it better. Like when, for example, Jan and I were in the United States some years ago. We arrived on the 10th of September 2001 to attend a conference in Chicago. And the way the Americans would say that date is 9/10. The following day was 9/11, when the whole world changed. A week later, we managed to get a flight out. It was one of the first flights to leave Chicago. Moments after we took off, there was a huge bang, and a fireball appeared on the tip of the wing. We'd been struck by lightning. That was a moment that we knew with some clarity that there was nothing we could do. Our lives were in God's hands. He allows the land in between because it is such a creative place for clarifying that we have no more solutions, no more things that we can do, no more cunning plans. We really do have to truly trust God. Have you got to that place yet? We'll do just about anything to avoid it, won't we? The same was true in Habakkuk's day. Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 4 says, "Look at the proud. They trust in themselves and their lives are crooked. But the righteous will live by their faith." Now, what I've discovered, and not just me, but everyone who has spent time in the land in between, is the paradox that it's when we are at our most powerless that we find that God is at his most active. But he waits until we stop trying to sort everything out ourselves and admit our need for him, our dependence on him. It's when we are weak that we are strong, that he is strong. We need to come to the end of our own solutions and truly trust in God. And that's the purpose of the land in between. It gets us to that place. God also uses the land in between to bring people back to himself. See, the fact is, the land in between is the place that God allows for us to grow into being ready for what he's calling us to do. If he transported us, beamed us straight from where we were to where he ultimately wants us to be, we would fail in that place because we're not ready for it. Now, the land in between makes us ready. That was true for the Israelites when they came out of Egypt and spent 40 years in those 5 deserts before finally entering the promised land. That 40-year period of wandering in those deserts, it wasn't a punishment from God. It was a recognition that the Jews had come out of Egypt, but now God needed to get Egypt out of the Jews. He needed to change their mentality from escaped slaves into being a nation ready for the promised land. And he uses the land in between to do that. So the land in between is often a time of stripping away. God has called you to something, you've set out, and you begin to experience reversals and losses and difficulties. It's a time of stripping away. As Habakkuk 2 verse 12 says, "How terrible it will be for you who build cities with money gained by murder and corruption. Has not the Lord Almighty promised that the wealth of nations will turn to ashes? They work so hard, but all in vain, For the time will come when all the earth will be filled, as the waters fill the sea, with an awareness of the glory of the Lord. That stripping away serves to bring us to the place of having to depend on Him rather than all the other stuff around us. And if we're to get to the promised land that He is pointing us towards, we're going to need to come back to Him and fully trust Him. So be truly glad. There is wonderful joy ahead, even though you must endure many trials for a little while. These trials will show that your faith is genuine, is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold, though your faith is far more precious than mere gold. So when your faith remains strong through many trials, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day when Jesus Christ is revealed to the whole world, says 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. That's what the land in between is designed to grow in us, so that we're made ready for what is up ahead. Because the true purpose of the land in between is to teach us to reprioritize our lives. Because it's a time of stripping away, a time of really having to hold on to God, the end result is that we come to see what's truly important in our lives and what really isn't. When our son David was battling with cancer in his childhood, we came to see this very clearly. So many things we thought were so important, when put in the context of will our son survive or not, just weren't that important. And other things that were placed in the nice to have but we're too busy category, things like prioritizing family time, like celebrating together, like being thankful for each day, they became a lot more important. Honestly, we spend our lives distracted by so many things, with satisfaction tied up in getting the next thing, the next upgrade, the next promotion. What sorrow awaits you who build big houses with money gained dishonestly. You believe your wealth will buy security, putting your family's nest beyond the reach of danger, says Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 9. The land in between strips all that away and shows us that none of those things really counts. What really counts is something that the missionary Jim Elliot wrote. You might remember Jim Elliot was a missionary to the Auca Indians in South America. And whilst he was at college, he wrote an entry in his journal that came to define his life and speaks so much into this subject of the land in between. He wrote this: "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. The land in between shows us the wisdom of a song that, we sometimes sing in church. Maybe you've heard of it. When the music fades and all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to bring something that's of worth that will bless your heart. It's all about you, Jesus. That's when the land in between has accomplished its purpose and when we are truly ready to move on to the promised land. When our priorities are upturned to put Jesus first and we are able to say, I had only heard about you before, but now I have seen you with my own eyes. That's the land in between. Not a series of senseless deserts, but the place that God has allowed to make us ready. Are you in the land in between? It is not the place where God has abandoned you. It's the place where God is growing you. If you will let him, he desperately longs for you to be in the promised land. But he needs to get you and me ready for that. And so he allows the land in between to be that creative place where we meet with him, and he grows us into the people that he longs for us to be. So embrace the land in between. Let it teach you the lessons that it has for you. And be sure that God is not abandoning you. He has the promised land up ahead. Father, I thank you even for the hardness, the hardship of the promise of the land in between. I thank you that you have not abandoned us. It is because you love us and that you are growing us and making us ready for the promised land, that you allow this land in between. So, Lord, would you help us to embrace the lessons that you have for us in this seemingly hard place, that we may be ready for all that lies ahead. I thank you, Lord, for your care, your provision, and your love for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, thank you so much for joining us again. I really hope you can join us the next time. In the meantime, please do visit Pastor James Byrne YouTube channel, and you'll see many other resources there, a growing number of resources. In the meantime, may God bless you. See you soon.